Had to do the South Park thing. Sorry.
Is that a South Park thing?
Yeah,
I'm,
it's an early South Park joke.
I
oh my God.
I
I'm
saw the
resident.
movie.
Oh my God. I'm resident of Colwood for YouTube. Joel Sains. That's my buddy Corey Dymowski. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to discuss episodes 4, yeah,
4 and 5.
4 and 5 of Archive 81. I'll get it right, I promise. Um, Guys, we get a seance in episode 4. How exciting is that? And it's one badass seance.
It is a badass seance.
So yeah, Ty definitely nod to Dark Shadows in this.
More than one. What Jewel? What are they in your esteem?
Well, the seance for one, but also too, they talk about. There's also a mention of, I believe it's either in this episode or episode 5, the mention of Ghost. I know that seems sort of, it's not a heavy mention. But the way they use it in this series, the way they use the verbiage, and Dan's sister says about Ghost that she tells Dan, because he's reliving, he's like having this flashback or something, and she says to him, "Dad says there's Ghost." And you learned that Dan's father, who yes was a psychiatrist, was very open minded to things, so he wasn't so close minded
One way to
about
put it.
the supernatural or the other stuff like that. You do learn that he was put on probation for what he put on a message board about a student, which was Melody. He didn't use her by name, but I believe, to me, the seance and the mention of ghosts, and more specifically, how they do their ghosts. Dan is trying to figure out if Melody really is a ghost, but he to him, and I agree with the character, she's not.
Yeah, I mean that of course presupposes that we have very exact scientific boundary-oriented definitions of what a ghost is.
Yeah.
And we don't. So maybe it is. That's hard to tell. There was another Dark Shadows reference though in this that I am pretty convinced about. And so I'm trying to find something about that right now. Because yeah, there's a reference. There's sort of a reference in Spirit Receivers, and then there may be a reference in episode 5 to a Dark Shadows like program. And it may not have happened yet. Sorry if it's a spoiler, or it may have gone by so quickly it was not noticeable.
Yeah, there was a super brief mention of something now called Phantasmagoria. And then there was a reference to the Circle where they had produced all the episodes, but they were all gone and all they had were the scripts.
Yeah, there is in episode 4, there's a woman at the party, and she talks about how she's always recording things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that she's recording is the supernatural soap opera.
Yeah.
And to me, that's Dark Shadows. At least in my opinion. And maybe
yeah,
I'm wrong
because
there.
I wasn't when Dan goes in and he finds all those
That's right.
books. They're they're the writings of a supernatural soap opera. Like
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it's essentially someone who's obsessed with Dark Shadows, and that they're recording it and they're watching it and they're talking about it and so on and so forth. And that was something that never really got picked up within the Dark Shadows community, and it never really went further than that. But that's where I say if it had gone for a second season, I think probably we would have gotten more out of it.
Well, I also think I think that this show, if it may not pay a lot of lip service to Dark Shadows, but there's a lot of Dark Shadows style thinking in it.
Oh yeah, I mean they've watched it,
Mm-hmm.
and I see that soap opera is the only thing that it's really comparable to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what did you guys think of the seance in Archive 81? Episode 4, sorry.
Scary. I mean, in what way beyond that?
Well, for me, this wasn't just the way. Obviously, the way they shot their seance isn't exactly the way Dark Shadow shot its seance, and this wasn't. This wasn't as Gordon put it before you came on when we were just bullshitting. Is that, and I agree with you. Is this isn't a seance that we quite got in Dark Shadows for the woman. I didn't see your mother. Then she's like, she's talking about the conversations Dan and her had. Then she just claws her face all up. I mean, you never that.
And this is the stuff that would have really happened to Bethia Mapes and Madame Finley. This is the reason why I think a lot of modern Dark Shadows fans kind of take it easy on Angelique, because they've seen what horrible things can really go on with this stuff. And as bad as Angelique is, it ain't that.
Well, I also think with the seance, it does something. And when I talk about Dark Shadows style thinking, one of the themes of Dark Shadows is always about how the past influences the present, not just in that historical context, but like when they go back to 1897, Barnabas puts the letter in the desk. Julia picks it up 100 years later, goes back in time, and you see that when the Beatrice, the medium, is repeating the conversation that Dan and Melody had word for word. Yeah. What you're seeing is it's no longer about reality versus fantasy or ghost versus reality. It's somehow that history is kind of melding with the present, and there's no real sense of, it's like two ages are interfacing in a way that is, it's very psychological horror. I mean, the only other kind of creative entity I can think of are some of David Cronenberg's films, where he may focus on body horror, but it's also the mental revulsion of what the hell is going on here. And I think that's where I see the Dark Shadows coming in, not just in terms of the the spirit receivers, which I think is a really clever idea, or even the supernatural soap opera, but the fact that past and present are intermingling in a way that it's more than just something happened here, so here's the after effect. They're starting to come together in a very interesting way.
I think you're going to see that more and more as it goes on. And there are other clues that it's laid down that you haven't, that it hasn't made good on, but it will. What do you make of her roommate?
You mean Annabelle?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to see how she's kind of flipped from being the, oh yeah, it's all creepy, to, oh my God, it's art. Because I think I one of the things that keeps coming back in the show, at least for me, is the idea of art is somehow capturing something ethereal. When the idea that you've got this, I think it's in episode 4 where they talk about, oh, there's this old series, and Cassandra just comes, and I'm going a little bit on a tangent, but you just say, oh, wasn't that based on an old snuff film or something? But yeah, Annabelle, you think she's going to be the skeptical one, the one who's going to be, she starts as that, but then she turns into, oh, okay, now she's the, I have this art, I've got all this. I mean, the fact that she's being turned down, that she's turning down the chance to sell this art that's painted with mold, with
Terranite.
magic mold.
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of go, okay, there's something really off here. And it's that weird I mean you don't see it coming, but in a way you can kind of see how it kind of goes through. And especially since Melody is kind of going into the whole, like, she's the one who's really in the more unreal situation. And she comes back and the person she expects to be the most real is even more unreal than she is.
Yeah. How much, what would you say is the percentage of Lovecraft that is in this so far for you?
I think right now, just the idea that, I think it's more the idea that worlds are kind of interacting in a very strange way. So if I had to give a number to it, I would say I'd say about 25%, because it's not, you've got the occasional flash of something coming through the videotape, but I think it's the idea of two different worlds kind of colliding, and there's some other reality that's starting to break through, and it's breaking through the videotape, where it's starting to affect the very nature of time itself.
Yes.
Yeah, you see a very interesting time. There's time displacement in episode 4, I believe, where Dan's going out for cell service, and then he sees Melody in the woods, and he's like, "How are you here?" And then all of a sudden, it goes from day to night, and there's that woman who, says she looks after the place, talking to him, and she tells him, "You were just standing there." And it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, and what's great is that there's some very deliberate editing. They look like glitches. They look like someone, wasn't doing their job, but they're not. They're very precise, because it's to give you that sense of, okay, something is not right here. Something is, there's something wrong here. But it's the other thing, and I love how clever this is. One of the lines that's used throughout the conversations with Melody and Dan is, Dan tells her, it's a feature, not a bug. That's in the 90s, that would have been an anachronism. It's I've only heard that within the last 10 years, because I think Steve Jobs said it as part of one of his speeches. So it's this great little way of talking about how time is broken down, where not only does he tell that to Melody, but when Melody hears that from Beatriz, it's not just, oh, she knows what's going on, but that's not something you would have heard in the 90s necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The glitchish nature of some of those moments also has a wonderful effect, because it reinforces the idea that the viewers are yet another layer to this type of historicity. That they are watching a record of a guy who is watching someone who is, so those, and that it is an imperfect medium. There's a sound effect, this kind of thing that shows up
I
now
love
and
the
then
sound
also.
design on this as well, because it's
Yeah.
you never really, it's deliberately, it's deliberately off-putting. I mean, this is actually, have either of you seen the Black Mirror episode, Jane is Awful?
Which one is that?
It's the one where the person discovers that they're in like a they have a
Oh
bad day.
yeah.
And
Is it Salma Hayek in that
yes,
episode? Yeah.
this is a better version of that episode.
Sure, I can see
So
that.
because it doesn't do it's, Charlie Booker is kind of like, he's not very subtle. He's never been subtle in terms of
No.
a writer. But here it's that kind of weird, there's almost this like weird complicit. The viewer is complicit in this whole thing. Not just from somebody watching a videotape and slowing it down and seeing the creature kind of lunge through the static, but that we are part of that whole kind of breakdown in reality.
Yeah.
You also, well, not in episode 4, but in episode 5, you learn that Melanie's mother seemed to, or apparently was a part of a coven, a witch's coven, or the same coven.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm not trying to jump around. I'm just getting that out there for episode 5. But I tell you, I love how they do the seance because it feels very, for the apartment room of how they film it, it feels, I love the space of how they do it. But I love too how when she goes back after the seance, she asked her friend, "Where were you? Why didn't you show up?" Because her friend never shows up to this, and she was supposed to. And they have one psychological moment with another, and it's like, Jesus, that's really good. Oh my god! But I do love the shove scene too with her friend in episode 5. She's like smothering me, like, stop, because she tells her friend, "We're leaving. We're going back to our home, our apartment in Brooklyn." Melody's had enough. She's tapping out, but which she's not, because that would be the end of the series at that point. But the fact that they have this character trying to find out what happened to her mother, but she's realizing there are other things going on. You have Dan, who realizes Mark Darvin's character is full of shit, and he realized that a couple episodes ago. Now he's really full of shit, and he's related to the guy in the Visser who may have killed somebody.
Who knows? I hear the milkman. Hang on.
Do you ever have something delivered to your house, Gordon?
I've had things, well, not this current apartment, because I've only been here a few months, and the doorbells don't work, so they'd have to call. Well, no, I had asked my landlord when I moved in. He's like, yeah, somebody was doing electrical work and they cut the line, so they said, oh, okay, it just means somebody has to call up when. But I've never had anything delivered here. Usually, if I order from Target, they can just leave it on my front porch and I can go down and get it. It's not like I'm ordering pizza, or I'm sure Patrick ordered, I don't know, maybe he ordered a case of super glue and just deliberately told Amazon, you know what, deliver it around 10:30 my time. I'll be, I'll either be, you can either leave it outside or I'll be stuck in that. Jewel will be talking about how Michael Myers should be beating up Martin Donovan, and let me throw out this gratuitous 70s reference so that Gordon will get in. And I'm sure, and Patrick, if you're watching this after the fact, I'm sorry, but this is what Jewel and I do when you're not around.
Pretty much. Oh my god. I'll tell you this, that when we first moved up to the mountains, and when we get stuff delivered up here, UPS will say it's going to get delivered at 9:00 at night. Okay, I'm here to tell you, I've only had 3 things show up in the middle of the night from a package standpoint, and one of the things was this big ass blanket my wife ordered. And I said, "Now you mean to tell me they could not deliver this in the middle of the day?" Because it's like up here there used to be, I don't know if there still is because I don't pay attention to it, but there used to be a paper route up here. And so you'd see the mailman, the newspaper man going in the middle of the night. You don't see that anymore. Now it's just the UPS truck you'll see go up the road in the middle of the night. It's like, literally, you want to deliver stuff here in the middle of the night? No, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah, and I'm sure people watching on YouTube are like, "Oh, go back to Archive 81. We don't want to hear about package delivery." Or do you? For those of you watching on YouTube, comment below. If you want us to talk about package delivery, we'll talk about package delivery. If you want us to talk about, I don't know, there are various 70s kids shows on Tubi now. So, if you want us to do the Bugaloos episode by episode, comment below. Electro Woman and Dyna Girl, down below. Dr. Shrinker, comment down below. If there's something that you think one of us will really hate, but you want the other two to like make fun of us for not liking it, comment down below.
I do have a comic book question for you, Gordon.
Okay.
Okay. In comics, to you, what was the superhero death that shocked you most?
Ooh, that is. I'm going to say X-Men 137 with Jean Grey, because it literally was like, okay, they're on the moon and it looks like they're going to win, but Jean turns into the Phoenix and she's like, I can't do this, and so she forces a ray gun to kill her. Of course, they've revived her several times, so.
Yeah.
And it sounds like my cat is being a little whiny. So be right back.
So yeah, that's interesting. I like Gordon's pick to most shocking superhero death. I will say I'll talk a little Archive 81 here while I'm waiting for Gordon. That with episode 4, for the biggest thing that I like too is a kitty. The biggest thing that I like most about episode 4 of Archive 81 though is, I know they were in this apartment a lot, but they make it look creepy. Even when Melody's just in a room. The Vista is a very creepy place for sure. But I'll give you mine most shocked, because I was in elementary school when it happened. Obviously the death of Superman, when Doomsday killed Superman.
Mm-hmm.
That was all the rage when I was growing up.
Yeah, because it's like you think, okay, yeah, they're never going to kill Superman. Even at the time, I thought, oh yeah, they're not going to do it, but they did it,
Yeah,
and they brought him back.
They pulled that trigger. Okay, here's one for you, because I think this goes in with the original creator. Green Lantern's first death.
That would have been the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh wait,
so.
yeah. Well, oh wait. Yeah, because he actually died. No, actually, that was Final Night. Yes, that was the 90s. It was, he had become a villain, and they decided to adapt a plot from the 60s where a creature that eats suns comes, and Green Lantern, as Parallax, goes, oh, hey, I'll sacrifice myself. And he does so. And
how about that, Archive? Keep going.
Yeah, and we were, Patrick, Jewel and I were talking about comic book deaths.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we didn't know what. We also talked about packaging options, like delivery options, because like Jewel has problems with UPS.
Yeah. Do you have a preference?
We also talked about super glue.
I love those topics. Talk me through each one of them painstakingly. Did you keep the bag?
Yeah, we also, somebody was a bit whiny, so I had to bring him in. So, see?
That's a question I want to ask you guys. What did you guys think of the priest who, before he gets killed, and then obviously the revelation of after he gets killed?
Well, he had more lines, before he got killed. But what else about the priest? I was taught long ago to fear the priest.
Well, he tries to looks like he was trying to perform some sort of exorcism in that one girl's room, on that one girl. And then the one guy who's Martin Donovan's character's brother, he kicks him out and he says, I'll get you help. I know professionals. And then even like right after that, you can tell that the Jess is starting to act a little strange too. There's, I don't want to quite say it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers like Switch, but it's pretty weird.
Well, and they're playing with the usual kind of tropes, because usually in a horror thing like this, the priest is either the one who is usually the one who is secretly behind the satanic stuff,
Yeah.
and the young guy is the earnest, and it's the whole faith versus science thing. Whereas here, I think they're playing that, like, the priest is actually kind of, in episode 5, Melody goes in and the priest has like the information about the Voss mansion and the coven and everything else. So they're playing him as like he's on the side of right and figuring out what the hell this is.
Yeah.
And the handsome young guy turns out to be the leader of the witch people.
Yeah, I would say that's a very accurate way to depict this.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so. Yeah, and it's sort of refreshing. I mean, this is a very pro-Catholic series in some ways. Catholic Church is set up to look like, sort of a strum is set up to look like it's going to be the bad guy, but they're really not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's the thing with shows or certain movies that involve religion, where I'll give a great example. The movie I watched where it seemed like religion was bad, or there was a suggestion of orphanages or religions that are bad, like Val Kilmer's The Saint, where he kept having a flashback of his friend dying and stuff. And then with this series here, with Archive 81, you have Melody, who's had a really bad experience with that sort of thing, growing up at a Catholic nunnery and stuff. And she says she wanted to give the priest a chance, but she didn't really. I love the character to death, but sometimes not that the character is doing it to piss off the audience, because to me she didn't. Sometimes characters lie to themselves. They say, well, I tried to give you a chance, but it's like, well, did you really?
Oh, I mean, mastering the notion that a character is an unreliable narrator, no matter how much screen time they get, is a tool that gives you tremendous power. That's one of the things I talk about in the day book when we get into 1897, especially when dealing with the ghost of Beth, is, how much of a reliable narrator are we really dealing with?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind too is that the priest doesn't have that much of a role in the story, as much as to be, this is all about, I think one of the themes of the show is about reality and perception. That even when you record something, you're watching it affects your perception. And with the priest, all we know about him is that, okay, he tries to exorcise a demon. He sounds like a very just traditional kind of, I'm here to be a priest. He dies by being run over by a train. And then, that he's been secretly collecting information about the Voss mansion, which turned into the Visscher apartments, because he knows all that stuff that's going on. And it's very easy. And I say this as a recovering Catholic, making Catholic priests the bad guys it's a very cheap and very talentless way of generating drama. It's like, ooh, and I'm not saying all Catholic priests are good. Again, recovering Catholic, good example is that about a few years ago, the Vatican, the Archdiocese of Chicago, released a list of priests who were either accused and found guilty of inappropriate behavior with youngsters, or they were accused and they investigated, but they didn't have enough evidence. One priest was asked to leave my high school before I became a student there, and two priests who they didn't have enough evidence were teachers there while I was in high school. And I thank God I was a tubby, ugly bastard, because that would have been, I feel very grateful, but I think it's very easy to use that as a straw man. And I think this is a show that's playing with the idea that perception and reality, and that sometimes we see, sometimes we can see things and develop perceptions that are not based in reality. And I think so. But I think Melody was also kind of looking at this as, yes, she's got one up. I don't think she ever had faith in the priest. I think she just saw him as kind of like, okay, priests are going to be automatically good, because she dealt with nuns, and nuns you don't want to mess with.
No, you don't. I mean, I'm fine with us having some realistic historical revisionism about the fact that the Catholic Church is very easy to vilify, and that that can be an unfair thing. And then there are nuns.
I'm glad I'm agnostic. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I had some bad experiences with nuns.
Yeah, I'm not going to, it's, yeah, I mean, I had the 1970s version of nuns, which were like older 1950s nuns, not pleasant. Let's move on.
Well, here's a question for you guys, and I'm not trying to beat on the religion thing, but with a priest performing an exorcism, because there's been stories of where people die during those, or they just end up being killed. So, do you think that thought ever occurred in Melody's mind? Maybe.
What, that Jess could die?
Yeah, during the exorcism.
Probably. I mean, she's from reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, is there? Well, Joel, let me ask you: is there evidence in the text? Because you know how I am about that. Is there evidence in the text to suggest that?
I don't believe there is.
I would argue that I don't think Melody was concerned about just dying as much as it is get her the care she needs. Period.
Yeah.
It's, I don't want to, no, I won't spoil it for you guys because I don't know. I know Gordon didn't see it. But just watch the first episode because again, I'm halfway through it. Watch the episode of Fall of the House of Usher.
It's a good companion piece for this show.
Yeah, it's so far from what I've seen of it. But I do think they do a lot of good things with these two episodes, 4 and 5. You get the seance, you get Melody's friends sort of turning against her. The episode 4 is the start of Melody's friend turning against her slowly but surely. Episode 5 is she's against her. She's like, seemingly. Now, I'm not going to play spoiler with Melody's friend because there's something about her that I won't mention. But you also get Melody, where Dan was seeing Melody, Melody seeing Dan. And I really like that sort of the reverse psychology of that. One seeing one, now the other seeing the other. Really, really good stuff the way the writers did this. I know this is based upon by the way, I'm going to leave a link in the description box for the podcast for Archive 81.
Now does the podcast pick up from the events of and I know that the podcast is different from the show, but does it pick up with the similar characters, or does it focus on another aspect?
The same. The first season tells the same story, more or less. Yeah,
good stuff.
Does season 2 of the podcast pick up with the story from season 1?
It picks up with what would have been season 2.
Oh, okay.
Very nice.
I'm fairly certain. It's been a while, but
yeah, definitely something worth listening to. By the way, if you got some spare time, or if you're just going for a walk and you need something to listen to, for sure. Really entertaining, just like this show is. It's really entertaining.
Yeah, or use it when you're watching this, and if one of us annoys you and you don't want to listen, just go, okay, Gordon's talking, hit play. Gordon's not talking, hit pause. I didn't want to pick on either of you, so it just seemed like I was the other.
It's I mean, I thank you.
Oh my god! No, when one of you guys is talking, I just turn the volume up. So, um,
Well, Jewel, that's very nice. But we're soft-spoken gentlemen.
yes. What's you guys' favorite scene in episode 4?
Oh, I love the Christie's ad at the beginning. I like that they are establishing how they're making this universe increasingly open. So yeah, I mean, I like that. I like the seance. I like anything involving her roommate a lot. Um, so any of that. Gordon, how about you?
Um, I'm really liking the first scene of the episodes because they have nothing to they're not directly linked to the plot, but they comment on something that happens. So like in episode 5, there's a news story about the train, and it turns out it's the priest. I think it's episode 2 where there's the kind of Siskel and Ebert cable and access about the Satan's carnival, and then there's a talk about the priest talks about good and evil. So, but it's also hard to find an individual scene because the way these episodes are written, it's not like Dark Shadows where you can go, okay, there's one highlight and then maybe there's one big scene and then maybe the rest are just leading up to it, or later on where it's just bang 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 bang, where it's maybe there's one scene that's stronger amongst. This is a pretty even keel. It's not that the scenes don't stand out. It's just it's such there's such consistency that it's hard to go. It's hard to take one scene out of context. It would be like, oh well, the seance was really good. Well, that was a deliberate, intense scene because it gave you further information. You know, um, Julia Bennett is not dead, but something else came into that seance, and it was scary enough where the medium started clawing her face.
And
So
that's
I don't.
serious.
Yeah, and I mean, and so there's no. It's hard for me to find like one scene and go, that's it. So
Mm.
sorry, Jewel. I'm not gonna. Don't make me choose a scene because it's not gonna happen.
It's like Sophie's Choice.
Yeah.
Choose a scene to die. Jewel never said that.
Gordon, or sorry, Patrick, you have a favorite scene?
Yeah, I told you it's the Christie's auction. I love those things. Yeah.
Mine for episode 4 outside of the seance is Melody visits the woman in the hospital. And I think to have that, you don't need it, but the fact that they have it in the episode is really good. It lets you know they're following up. Archive 81 is really, really good at following up on things. And for episode 5, the scene I enjoyed the most is the conversation between Dan's father and Melody at the house, at the family home, where she goes and visits him, and she goes, I think I'm seeing ghosts. I think I'm being haunted, or she says, I think I'm being haunted. And she says about his son, where his son has told her she's going to die in the fire at the Visser. And he said, you're really not just saying this to get back at me because of stuff. He goes, I got suspended because of a mess I put about a student on a message board. She goes, was it me? He goes, yes, but I didn't say by name. I wasn't being too specific. I just put enough there to. And so it's really interesting. That conversation is really interesting. And she says, I'll send you the tapes. And she does send him the tapes. Again, really, the writers do a really great job. And again, I know they're going off of a podcast, which is, has its own material, but they do a really good job of how they pace the show and follow things up within the episode.
I agree.
Is there anything you guys want to add about episode 4 or 5?
No, I'm eager to get to episode 6 and 7.
Mm-hmm. We can't do it Friday or Saturday. How's Sunday?
Sunday's fine with me.
Yep.
Okay. Tomorrow night, guys, we're going to be reviewing Soylent Greens with Butch Rosenbaum.
Wait, today's Wednesday.
Oh no, wait, today's Wednesday. Oh, that's right. Sorry, I'm like days ahead. So tomorrow is good. We can do Thursday. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'm losing
I'll be
track.
there.
Yeah, I'll be
So
here.
yeah. So tomorrow, Thursday, tomorrow, we're doing episode 6 and 7.
Don't worry, Joel. I sometimes forget what day it is too, and most of the time it's the crack I'm smoking, but you don't have that excuse. So
You're on thin ice. See you later.
good night.